Chances are you've been here before. Maybe not this exact stretch of road, but some road somewhere. You've been putting in too many hours, perhaps, not getting enough sleep. Or you took some cold medication that made you drowsy. You might have found yourself driving on a long, lonely, boring, flat, deserted, tedious stretch of road. Luckily, you realized you were starting to fall asleep. You caught yourself before it was too late. Or maybe you didn't. Ooh, now that might wake you up. Hi, I'm Colby Chester. For me right now, drowsiness wouldn't be dangerous. But then again, I wasn't really driving. This is just TV make-believe. But out there, out on the road, it's for real. You're not off, and you don't always get the opportunity to learn from your mistake. Your Northwest Ford dealers understand. Driving drowsy is a serious problem, and a sneaky one. We'll all be better off learning how to stay heads up at the wheel and get home safe. True or false, people over the age of 40 are more at risk of falling asleep at the wheel?
True.
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 The answer is false. The greatest incidence of drowsy driving accidents occurs among those under the age of 25, with 20-year-old males the most common victims. In fact, 78% of drowsy driving crashes involve male drivers.
Yeah, I get plenty of sleep.
Sure you do. But the truth is, 20-year-olds often don't get the sleep they need, so they're more at risk than their parents. No matter what your age, though, when your brain demands sleep, it's no longer your decision. Let me tell you a little bit about how that works. If you haven't been getting enough sleep, that's a debt your brain needs to collect on. And one way or another, it will.
If the sleep debt becomes large enough, then the person can fall asleep uncontrollably, often without realizing it. We call these microsleeps.
Microsleeps. Short naps lasting just a few seconds that you may not even be conscious of. Maybe you think that's not a big deal, dozing off for 3 or 4 seconds, until you consider the fact that at 60 miles an hour, in 3 seconds, you've just traveled the length of a football field. In 5 seconds, almost twice that. Think about it. Now, this doesn't mean the rest of you drivers are off the hook. Almost anybody can be at risk. Truckers and commercial drivers, for example, who put in long, irregular hours on long stretches of highway, a potentially dangerous situation at best. Shift workers. Of the several million people who work odd or fluctuating hours, more than a quarter of them have had fatigue-related driving mishaps in the last year. Older drivers are especially at risk in the mid-afternoon hours. And anyone with a sleep disorder like sleep apnea, especially one that he or she may have and not know about.
Sleep apnea is felt to be more common than asthma and epilepsy in adults.
Apnea can increase the risk of falling asleep at the wheel by about 300 to 700%. If you're tired and don't know why, ask your doctor. If you want to put a dollar figure on the damage caused by drowsy driving and sleep-related accidents, here's a wake-up call for you.
Thousands.
Oh, yeah.
$50,000.
Millions.
Probably the hundreds of millions.
Multi-millions.
Billions of dollars. That's billions with a B. But the dollar figure is insignificant next to the human toll from drowsy driving.
I think the emotional side of it is the hugest damage that happens when people are hurt.
One way or another, we all end up paying the price. This ever happened to you?
I actually dozed off for a second. I woke up, I was on the opposite side of the road. I've actually done it, and I fell asleep at the wheel and plowed into the back of a Hudson.
The road's straight, car's going straight, everything looks good, no need to pay attention.
You're driving along, and suddenly it occurs to you you can't remember the last few miles. You realize you're tailgating or drifting across lanes and jerking yourself back just in time. Or you find yourself failing to notice traffic and highway signs.
Please, Nicky, at the second red light you run.
Or when you lose focus for an instant. Ever noticed your head starting to nod? You can't seem to keep it upright? You might also catch yourself yawning frequently. And if you've ever experienced the rude awakening you get when you drift onto the rumble strip alongside the highway, you've been driving drowsy. As I said earlier, chances are you've probably been in one of these situations, and you might even have convinced yourself you've got your own special routine guaranteed to keep yourself awake. A cold splash in the face, for example. And who can forget the old standards? The old wind-in-the-face routine. Cranking up the radio. Self-punishment is fairly popular. And hey, most people think these things actually work. But the truth is, that's a perilous misconception. Your brain is smart. You can't trick it into thinking it's alert when it decides it's time to shut down. So, what do you do? Well, there are several active steps you can take to avoid having a sleep-related accident. But the fact of the matter is, the more you plan ahead for your drive, the better you'll be able to prevent drowsiness at the wheel. At the top of the list, get plenty of sleep before you hit the road.
Simply not getting one's required amount of sleep. This is epidemic in our society.
The least you can do is start out with your sleep tank filled to capacity. Plan your schedule ahead of time to include regular stops at 2-hour intervals or every 100 miles or so. Try to work it out so you can drive with a buddy. Keep your eye on each other and watch for any signs of drowsiness. When traveling in a group, make sure someone stays rested and ready. Someone just like a designated driver who plans ahead to drive wide awake and sober when it's his or her turn. Avoid driving while taking alcohol or any kind of medication which could make you drowsy. Read the labels carefully. And there are a couple of times a day when the body just wants to go to sleep naturally. So be especially on the lookout if you're on the road during the mid-afternoon hours or the hours between midnight and 6 a.m. Okay, let's say you've ignored all these suggestions I've just made. Or for whatever reason, you find yourself out on the road. You notice the signs of drowsiness. All those things like yawning, nodding, eyelids drooping. Rumble strips! The instant you notice any signs you're becoming drowsy, it's time to do something about it immediately. What, you ask? Well, the best way to protect yourself against the dangers of drowsy driving is to pull off the road and find a safe place to rest. It might get you there a bit later, but think of it as the rest of your life. And while a good hot cup of coffee or tea can open your eyes a bit, don't overestimate the restorative powers of caffeine. A bit of caffeine is good for short-term alertness. But remember these two things. Number one, caffeine needs some time to take effect. And number two, it's temporary, a short-term remedy at best. Sometimes it doesn't even work at all. So don't assume you're home safe with just one cup. One major advantage to staying heads up at the wheel is the ability to keep a sharp lookout for the other guy. You're not the only one at risk of dozing off. Every year, drowsy driving-related mishaps run well into 6 figures. And we don't want any of you to be one of them. To prevent that, your Northwest Ford dealers are working together to spread the word. Increasing public awareness is the first priority toward reducing the number of sleep-related crashes. That's why we've partnered with the National Sleep Foundation to help you drive heads up at the wheel and get home safe. We're working to generate year-round interest, especially around peak holiday driving weekends. And we're reaching out to spread the word among young people at schools and in front of civic and community groups, as well as the general TV viewing public.
It's all part of the 4th of July weekend, but the holiday weekend is also a danger zone for drowsy driving. That's why Northwest Ford dealers and the National Sleep Foundation are launching the Heads Up at the Wheel program today.
We're hoping more and more people will wake up and take notice. And we'd like to encourage all of you to tell others about Heads Up at the Wheel and Home Safe. Every one of us stands to benefit from lowering the number of drowsy driving accidents. It's not enough just to target the high-risk groups either. Every driver is potentially at risk, and not just from his or her own drowsiness. The more drowsy drivers out there on the road, the greater the risk to you, even if you're wide awake. You can help us spread the word and save lives. Remember, if you find yourself drowsy at the wheel,
And you think you can wake yourself up? You're wrong. The odds are you can't. When you see the warning signs, do something about it right away.
One last reminder. If you're a passenger, keep an eye on the driver. Make sure he or she stays heads up at the wheel. That way, everybody gets home safe.